Welcome everybody to today's webinar for our Penn AI Tech Collaboratory. Penn AI Tech is the Penn Artificial Intelligence and Technology Collaboratory for Healthy Aging, an initiative funded by the National Institute on Aging. And I'm George Demiris, one of the PIs of Penn AI Tech, and I'm happy to launch our webinar series for this academic year. And we're very excited for our speakers today who are coming to us from MITRE. And I'm going to do introductions first so that our speakers can present their work. I want to remind you all that this session is being recorded and also that you can post any questions you have using the Q&A button, and we will be having a Q&A session after the speakers' presentations. As I mentioned, we have two great speakers today, Brendan McEntee, who's Incubation Lead at MITRE Engenuity. Brendan uses market forces, cross-sector innovation, and the power of collaboration to change the world. He's currently an Incubation Lead with MITRE Engenuity, and his role is to identify and rapidly scale new offerings by leveraging unique IP and expertise to make a generational impact. His diverse career includes leadership experience spanning social entrepreneurship, stakeholder engagement, strategic communication, issues advocacy, performance measurement, and medical and scientific publishing. And he's joined by Meredith Benedict, who is a principal at health policy at the MITRE Corporation, a nonprofit organization that works with government and private sectors to improve safety, stability, and well-being of our nation. She serves as project lead with Brendan in exploring the Healthspan Innovation Hub concept. And her career interest is in advancing program and policy for populations that have been traditionally underserved. We're very excited to have them both join us today. So I'll hand it over to Brendan. Thank you both.
Thank you. And we are very excited to be here as well. We want to thank the Penn AI Tech Collaboratory for inviting us to connect with everyone on the line today. If you're on this call, you probably know better than anyone else that neither government, industry, nor society is truly prepared for the growth of the 65+ population we'll see over the next decade. The Penn AI Tech Collaboratory and the A2 Collective have an incredibly important role in inspiring the next generation of new technology and next generation of application of AI to help us really shore up the ability of society to meet the needs of this incoming population boom. At MITRE, we started exploring the question of how can we help our nation get ready for aging through our nonprofit mission of solving complex problems for a safer world. And we've been interested in understanding how we can really be additive to the great work already underway by organizations like the A2 Collective, the National Institutes of Aging, and the Penn AI Tech Collaboratory. We're very excited to share here on this webinar a little bit about our organization, about our research that we're underway, looking about how we can help our world prepare for the demographic shift of an older population. And we really want to hear from you about how we can best support your work. So we're going to start with an introduction to MITRE and MITRE Engenuity. MITRE has been an organization that's around for 60 years, but it has sort of a defense background. And so we've been a little under the radar. So we're excited to share a little bit more about who we are for those who may not be familiar. And then we're going to share about how we approach incubation within MITRE Engenuity. How do we launch sort of new offerings? And then lastly, Meredith will share about our research to date in the healthy aging and longevity space and sort of the concept that we're exploring launching in this arena. We do want to encourage people throughout the webinar to really put questions into the Q&A as we talk about our organization, about our approach to corporate incubation, about our concept. Please start thinking about where you are in your journey as an innovator or in your work at an organization, and pop into the chat how you think we might be able to collaborate. In particular, for the startups and innovators already benefiting from the great investment of $40 million by the National Institutes of Aging into the collaboratories, we want to hear what you need next. What type of collaboration might you need to scale? We would love to have a conversation as time permits at the end of this presentation to learn more about your needs, where you see potential opportunities for collaboration, and where you may be in your innovation cycle, and in particular those sticky areas or valleys of death that many innovators experience as they're launching new initiatives. And with that, I'll ask our great host here to open up a poll. We'd love to learn about sort of who's on the line and get to know you. While we open this up, I'll just introduce myself a little bit more. My background is in nonprofit leadership. I spent most of my career working in the addiction medicine space. I started at a small professional society called the American Society of Addiction Medicine, and moved from there to the Pew Charitable Trust, again, sort of focused in the addiction field before coming to MITRE. I've always been very passionate about how can we make change the fastest possible. And really, MITRE Engenuity is looking at how we can leverage sort of the forces of capitalism to really accelerate change and public good innovation. And that's sort of the role that I'm in at the organization now, is to investigate opportunities for quick change through sustainable business model innovation. I'll ask Meredith to introduce herself briefly too, and then we'll look at the results from the poll.
Thank you, Brendan. Just adding to George's introduction, as George said, I have focused on work with organizations that are focused on underserved populations for much of my career. I worked in Boston at one of the large safety net hospitals, and after that went on and did an MPH, and for a while was with a small startup in Boston, thinking about how to connect patients, providers, their pharmacists for medication therapy management and behavior change and adherence, and then went back into the safety net, a large federally qualified health center, before coming to MITRE. And at MITRE, I've done a number of projects that support our federal sponsors in the federally funded research and development centers that we operate, CMS, the VA, CMCS, and during COVID, I co-led the project team that stood up an independent commission looking at safety and quality in nursing homes. And since that time, I've been involved in internal MITRE projects, thinking about the aging demographic shift, thinking about MITRE capabilities in different areas of technology, and how those can be brought forward to some of the challenges that are being experienced around data interoperability and cybersecurity, things like that. So I've been really kind of looking across our organization, and that's what connected me up with Brendan and the Healthspan Innovation Hub work.
Thank you, Meredith. And with that, let's see what we've got in terms of attendees. All right, so a good portion, 28% of you from startup, very high pool of academic, some good government folks, healthcare system folks, current awardees, caregivers, patients, and I see some other. Be curious for those others, maybe pop into the Q&A who you might be and what category you'd be falling into, so we can better understand some of you folks there. And with that, welcome. Thanks for letting us know a little about you. And I will jump to talking a little bit about who MITRE is. So MITRE is a company that is really known for pioneering technology. Many of the technologies that society relies on today, things like GPS or the air traffic control systems, those were technologies that MITRE pioneered. Our mission as a nonprofit is to solve complex problems for a safer world, and MITRE really enacts this mission primarily through operating what's called federally funded research and development centers, or FFRDCs. FFRDCs are a streamlined vehicle for the government to access needed talent and specialized expertise. As I mentioned in the beginning, our primary background was supporting sort of federal agencies around defense. One of the first problems MITRE addressed for a safer world was securing our nation with the missile defense system. Today, we've really expanded to be an operator of many FFRDCs. We actually operate 6 of them, and we've gone beyond our origin in defense and into areas like transportation, health, and beyond. We represent more than 9,000 employees working in the public interest. And Meredith, I'll turn it over to you on this next slide to talk a little bit about our 6 FFRDCs and share a little bit more about MITRE.
Excellent. So on this slide, you can see the 6 FFRDCs listed at the top right, represented there, focusing on enterprise modernization that serves a number of sponsors, including Treasury, Veteran Affairs, IRS. We also have CASD, which is focused on aviation safety and systems development and air traffic control. We have the Health FFRDC, which is our newest FFRDC that was started about 10 years ago during health reform. And the focus is on looking at, a systems approach, thinking about the challenges that our health systems face. We focus on technology, policy, a number of different areas, and we support, it was stood up by CMS as our sponsor, but we actually support many different agencies within HHS and organizations within HHS and continue to grow that over time. Homeland Security as well is another area that we have an FFRDC in, National Cybersecurity FFRDC, where we partner with industry in looking at best practices through the NIST CCOE, and then the National Security Engineering Center, which is serving the national security sector. The light blue on this organization chart is also really referring to other areas that we support, not as formally through a federally funded research and development center, and then also shows MITRE Labs, which is a division that I'm in. And we have a number of different innovation centers there. We support the work of the FFRDCs, but we also conduct our own internally funded R&D that ultimately may then contribute to sponsor work, and we interact with industry, state, and local government and international organizations as well. And then MITRE Engenuity is our newest area, as Brendan mentioned. Brendan, I don't know if you want to add anything more there.
Just getting to my mute button.
Great.
Thank you, Meredith. And I'll talk a little bit about MITRE Engenuity. So it's, as Meredith said, our newest area of MITRE. It's a 501c3 non-for-profit public good tech innovation foundation. It was really formed to be able to expand upon MITRE's mission of solving problems for a safer world by creating more deep engagements with the private sector. The strategic vision behind the origin of MITRE Engenuity was a recognition of the incredible growth in R&D that is now conducted by the private sector, and asking the question of how might we forge collaboration, harness this growth in private sector R&D for the public good. Following MITRE's history of pioneering solutions for a safer world as an operator of federally funded research and development centers for the government, Engenuity is really pioneering new ways that we can engage the private sector in this public good mission. At Engenuities, we are thinking about ways we can target high risk areas of the market to launch sort of sustainable businesses. And we're measuring our success by public good outcomes. Some of our core principles are acting as a neutral and trusted partner at MITRE Engenuity. Our mandate is really to collaborate, not compete with industry. And we have a goal of bridging across sectors. One of our core aims also is to be able to deliver MITRE's deep expertise in critical areas in collaboration with the private sector. Some of the critical areas we think where we have deep expertise are areas like cybersecurity, communications, data analytics, health technology, privacy regulations, et cetera. And a core goal is really bridging innovation gaps. We think about the areas where companies view it as too risky to really invest and launch an offering as a good area for us to try and enter. We're targeting sort of generational change. We also think about areas that might be too costly to really be addressed in a sustainable way by government. Our 2023 focus area is really around resiliency for our democracy. We think about resilient systems, trusted AI and cyber threats sort of in that category, resilient networks, thinking about the great advances in telecom, 5G, 6G innovation, resilient supply chains with a focus around semiconductors there, resilient talent, focusing on equity and inclusion, because we know growing equity and inclusion is really the core way that we can solve a lot of the complex problems that we're facing. And then resilient populations, which falls squarely where sort of Meredith and I have been investigating around accelerating healthy aging. The original question we got asked was, how might we help our nation prepare for this aging demographic shift? And the way that we sort of explore these topics is through an incubation engine that lives within MITRE Engenuity, a team that's constantly scouting for ideas, following a somewhat of a lean startup methodology for launching new initiatives. We start by proposing an idea that's really aligned to our strategic mission. In the discover phase that's shown on here. During that phase, we flesh out the concept that we want to propose and explore and see if it works. We then move into the explore phase, the second phase of our incubation methodology. And that's really to see, does this problem that we're trying to address fit to the problem that the concept is trying to solve? And is there market potential and market viability for a sustainable business around solving that problem? We test that concept and explore, and then if we find sort of a fit there between the problem and the customer that we're trying to address, we move into the develop phase. And the develop phase is really around finalizing a potential offering for market launch and building sort of a legal framework that can serve that new offering to be able to enter the market and deliver impact. Ingenuity is really sort of focused on building sustainable business models. So once they enter into the execute phase, there's sort of a launched offering. We believe that it's critical that we find sort of a way for a match with customers who see the business offering has a core way to solve their problems, and that we launch a business that is really addressing a core societal issue. Some of the core models that we look at for launching new offerings are R&D consortiums. We launch startup incubations, we launch subscription platforms, and sometimes we do philanthropic engagement or impact projects where critical research is needed. And I just have a few examples to try and make that concept much more concrete. So one of the first programs that we launched was the Open Generation R&D Consortia. Some of the members of this consortia include organizations like Nokia, Ericsson's, Qualcomm, Verizon, Samsung, and more. We created the Open Generation Consortia because we recognize that advanced telecom use case breakthroughs cannot really be solved by any one party alone. As an example, if you think about the messy challenge of validating uncrewed aircraft systems, there was really a need for a testing ground for those systems, because if you're thinking about needing to secure permission to fly in restricted airways, move through communities. That's one group of stakeholders that needs to be aligned to work together. And then if you're thinking about all the data that you need as an uncrewed aircraft move through space, moving through multiple different telecom providers, moving through different public and private networks, and being able to get the data out from those networks to better understand the effects of different latencies on the ability of uncrewed aircraft systems. There's a bunch of different stakeholders across many different sectors that need to be sort of coordinated and brought together. So our first offering was this open generation of creating sort of that linkage of all these multi-sector stakeholder partners and a testing ground. And today that consortia continues to grow. A second example of more of an impact sort of project is this embedded Capture the Flag program, which is a form of a hackathon that's really targeted at growing diverse talent in critical areas of cybersecurity, like embedded security. The Embedded Flag program actually challenges students with an exciting semester-long competition focused on real problems like the security of your car fob to connect with your car, and they get to use real hardware. So every team that's working in the hackathon, we actually ship them a physical piece of hardware where they get to touch it and try and hack the systems through that physical piece of hardware. Through this semester-long competition, students learn how to work as a team. They learn skills that aren't taught in school in this critical area of embedded security, and they get to interact with the leading cybersecurity and chip companies, groups like Fortinet, Analog Device, and CrowdStrike. This year's competition engaged more than 500 students, and we're hoping to keep growing that next year and expanding much longer. So many of those academic groups that are on the line, please reach out for more information. I'm happy to follow up on that. We'd love to get teams from many of the schools on the line sort of to participate. Lastly, the Semiconductor Alliance is another example of work that we've led, really created to inspire safer chip designs and a new R&D approach for chips in the future. We wanted to help envision what the future of American competitiveness might be in the semiconductor field. How might we secure tech innovation, manufacturing leadership, and supply chain resilience within America? And with that, I'll turn it over to Meredith to get to the core concepts that we really want to talk about with you today that we're exploring in the healthy aging arena. Meredith?
Thanks, Brendan. And I think that the statistics that are on this slide are probably familiar to everyone on this call that's been working in this space. But we use this to sort of illustrate a couple of considerations as we were in our discovery period. I think thinking about caregivers and caregiver to older adult ratios and how they're changing is reflecting both pressure on the system, the formal systems of healthcare delivery, as well as pressure on families and individuals, and how are people going to find the supports they need, afford the supports they need, how can caregivers be benefited by technologies that can make their jobs easier, extend them in different ways. How can individuals who are aging be able to have more independence and delay the need for caregivers through the role of technologies. And so this was kind of a starting point for us to think about the scale of the problem, think about different dimensions of the problem. But as we talk about Healthspan Innovation Hubs, we're certainly thinking beyond the context of just caregivers alone, but it was a helpful way to kind of illustrate sort of the scale of how our rapidly aging society is really going to impact many different settings and many different systems, whether we're talking about, again, a workforce, the healthcare system, employers, families, the individuals who are aging themselves, the communities in which people are living. Brendan, you can go to the next slide. So as we started to do our discovery, and that included talking with folks at the A2 Collective, National Academies of Medicine, meeting with folks that are involved in the AARP, Age Tech Collaborative. Brendan was out at CES with AARP, doing some talks, and also just meeting folks from the floor that had innovation, whether they were coming from industry, and thinking about how their innovation in another area might apply to aging considerations, or whether they were specifically already in the age tech space, and figuring out how they could scale. And we really were hearing about how can technology bring the right insights to the right parties at the right time? How can technology support people to maximize the years of their life that they are living in good health and free of disability? How can we prolong that health span versus lifespan? How can we engage older adults as they go through their aging and develop either episodic challenges or ongoing chronic challenges? And as I mentioned before, thinking about caregiver and provider capacity. Some of the barriers we heard about, we know that the AI are also working to think about how to address some of these barriers, but we heard folks talk about how to test in real operational environments, whether those are nursing facilities, senior residential, other senior residential settings, or in people's homes, and really do that with the kind of scale that can continue to help them provide validated data. Thinking about the affordability of technology. Are they thinking about a business model that can really serve all of our populations, or is it really a consumer play that's going to benefit people with a lot of discretionary income? What is the data that could bring a payer around to sort of say this would be something that they would want to be covering and reimburse, and what are the pathways to that? This issue of kind of readiness and fit to user needs and health span challenges, that process of co-design with older adults, with caregivers, with providers, with other community actors that may be supporting people as they age, and how to really access those folks early in the process, so that co-design can really be informing how solutions are developed, and then being able to work across sectors, being able to really look at some of the challenges around device and data interoperability. Who owns data, thinking about trust and security limitations around innovation. And these are some of the areas where MITRE has deep capabilities, thinking about data interoperability, thinking about cybersecurity. We're already doing work with our federal sponsors on these issues. And as more healthcare moves into the home, as consumers are doing more in gathering their own data and sharing it with others, we see continued work in that area, and thinking about that middle layer of data aggregation and sharing. So again, it does deliver the right insight to the right folks at the right time, as one of the challenges of these great opportunities that innovation is creating. And so we also looked as well at kind of thinking about our country, and there are certain states that are very far down the line, kind of evolving multi-sector plans for aging that are often stood up kind of out of the leadership of the governor's office, and focus on a multi-sector strategy around preparing for aging. And then there are other regions that may not be focused in that way yet. There are regions of our country where they already are real recognized innovation hubs, and they're doing a lot. So we started to think of that as kind of like thinking about regional readiness for aging, and
and also regional opportunities to attract innovation and participate in innovation, and the opportunity for regions to really be able to engage with innovators, to help innovators understand maybe in some of the more resource poor areas of the country, how innovation can have impact for them. So our strategy was to think about working with different regions, reaching out to different regions, and thinking about creating a regional ecosystem, what we're calling Healthspan Innovation Hubs, working with the region to define a regional challenge area and regional innovation capabilities that they might want to attract and build there, and then setting up that hub to attract innovators that already have achieved a certain level of progress in their innovation, and trying to create those opportunities for them to get into those operating environments, to create opportunities for them to maybe work with other innovators and other resources in that region to design solutions that are kind of integrating across a number of different innovation and capabilities areas, and help to build further pathways to the market. And a benefit that we also hope will come out of these hubs is that will help those regions also grow their local economy. So this is a concept that we have been testing. Brendan, I think if you go to the next slide, it illustrates this in a little bit more detail. So the idea is that we would ultimately like to catalyze a number of innovation hubs in different regions across the country, and that they, as they are stood up, they will also form a national network. And MITRE Engenuity would be convening them and helping to operate them in their initial years. And they'd really be ecosystems that are tailored to those regional needs. The different hubs would be differentiated from one another based on the regional challenge that they have defined that they want to work on, and the innovation capabilities that they would like to become known for as a hub that can support and help accelerate those capabilities. And as I said, we'd be attracting entrepreneurs and businesses to come to that hub to provide the supports that they need to kind of move their innovation forward. We think that the hubs will yield insights that will help policymakers and others to think about program and policy change that might be related to the innovation and related to the understandings and insights that will be generated out of this work, that the technologies and innovation that are occurring in that region will also have an impact on that region, on the regional challenge they have spoken of. I'll give an example of one region that we are doing exploration with, is very focused on thinking about the growth of their older adult population, the pace of that, and challenges around direct caregiving workforce availability. And they know there's going to be a gap. And so they very much kind of at a strategic level want to get on top of this, and they want to bring innovators into the state to help them focus on that. Another group that we're talking with is very much focused on thinking about seniors in affordable housing, public housing contexts, and how do you bring innovation into those contexts, and how can those innovations be supported and the residents be supported to make use of those? The idea being that helping people to maintain the ability to live in those settings versus go to a nursing home, and kind of delay and help them avoid being in a nursing home if they can. So that's kind of the outline of the concept. And I'll pause there for a second and see, Brendan, if there's anything I've missed that you wanted to highlight there.
No, I think you're doing a really good job of explaining it, Meredith. And I think the only thing I'll add is, if we think about this in the lens of sort of our life cycle of investigation at Ingenuity, We sort of are in the explore phase right now, as Meredith alluded to, and we're trying to see, is there actually market interest for one of these hubs to be established? We hope to get one hub established and use that as a pilot proof of concept that then allows us to really establish a couple other hubs. And we're really trying to, understand within the region, what type of groups may come together to try and establish one of these hubs. The dots you're seeing on the screen are really notional. Those don't actually represent sort of locations where we're thinking of diving into, or where we have connections that we're exploring right now. So I'll turn it back to you, Meredith, and I'll jump to the next slide.
Excellent. Great. So what we're doing is, as we said, we're kind of in this explore phase. We're in conversations with several regions right now. We're hoping to move with at least one of those regions into a phase where we have a committed set of organizations that wants to move into kind of a workshopping process with us to really co-design what is the vision, objectives, offering of a hub, who are the parties that are coming together, develop that operating and business model, and identifying other stakeholders to engage. I saw a question about whether we've been talking with the AAAs yet. In some of those regions, yes, we are starting to connect with them. We certainly think as we bring the organizations together that they are going to be part of those stakeholder organizations that are assembled for this process of workshopping and definition. And we sort of are thinking about this in a very kind of multi-sector way of who needs to be in the room. And that's, the AAAs, the health system actors, the local kind of leaders of industry and philanthropy that are kind of thinking about kind of how these things interact, the payers in that environment as well, would be examples of some of the groups that we've been bringing together, as well as older adults themselves, people that can speak to their own experience. We think that's really important as well to have that as part of this co-design process. So we are really at a stage right now with the regions that we have been speaking with to kind of sort of figure out who might be ready to move forward with us kind of first, and then move to this develop phase where we really spend a number of months really figuring out what is the operating and business model, refining the governance and infrastructure, and then moving into piloting hubs, piloting a hub in 2024. We think that we have one that may be ready to go kind of sooner rather than later into this process, and some of the other regions that we're talking with, we think will kind of be following a number of months kind of behind. But as Brendan indicated, we're really hoping to get a number of hubs kind of established so that we have a network over the next couple of years. And all of this is kind of interrelating as well with opportunities and efforts that some of these regions may be pursuing in terms of like NSF Engine grants and US EDA innovation hubs. So there's a lot of other infusions of federal opportunities that different regions may be competing for right now, and they may or may not interrelate with some of these hub conversations. We're kind of mindful of that, and some of the federal decision making around that may determine whether some regions are in a position to move forward with some of these ideas and bring some of their resources, or whether they may be thinking about what their plans are in those areas, and how that might interrelate with thinking about kind of an aging focused hub, and how those two things might coexist in their environment.
Thank you, Meredith. With that, we'll move into the Q&A stage. And I'll say, we have theories, and we've been sort of researching different services, so to speak, that we think are going to be of most value to the hub. Things like a real testing environment that brings together these multi-stakeholders to provide validation and scaling support. We also are thinking about access to potential investors, and how that supports and sort of gets interfaced into the hub. It's sort of a way that we're trying to think about how we match all the different stakeholder needs to make sort of a hub a thriving ecosystem. So we'd love to hear from you in the chat or otherwise through questions. Are our assumptions correct about what your needs might be and what you would benefit from in this sort of multi-sector environment? So don't be afraid to put sort of those comments in the chat or contact Meredith and I after. And with that, I'll turn it over to George to start the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Brendan and Meredith, for this great presentation, and it has already generated a lot of questions and discussion. I want to remind our attendees to post your question in the Q&A box if you haven't done so, and maybe we can go through some of the questions we've received so far. So within Penn AI Tech and the other AITC collaboratories, we have pilot awardees who work on an innovative idea for 1 year. So a question was, how do you envision your idea life cycle potentially intersecting with some of our AITC awardees? Would you be doing an independent assessment or building on previous evaluations of the idea concept if there was a partnership to be explored?
Do you want me to answer that, Brendan?
Yeah, go ahead, and then I can jump in after with any additions.
Oh, you go first. Yeah, you go first.
I will say, sort of in our research, we found a lot of organizations and funding that's really focused on idea creation and initial validation. And so we view ourselves as being sort of later in the innovation cycle when there's need for much more validation data from multi-sector partners and trying to ease sort of the access to those partners at one time so that data can be collected much more faster. So we envision these environments having a mix of payers, caregivers, informal and formal, the individuals who are using the technology themselves, and having them all together at once committed to testing out the technology and providing that data that's going to be needed to support scaling in the future. So Meredith, I don't know, anything you want to add to that? That's how we see sort of the fitting of our concept in with a lot of already great work that's out there.
That's right. Yeah, I would just kind of underscore that by saying I think the idea of the hubs was to sort of say folks have had funding and where do they go next? And it's the idea of the hub is to kind of create that environment where so for example, if it was the one that I mentioned, the region that's really focused on technologies to support the direct care workforce. If that is what your innovation area is in, and you've been working in that, you've been funded through the AITC for that, we hope that the hub will allow you to kind of come to the hub and get additional supports and resources as you move to the next stage and be able to connect with both these settings where you can hopefully be implementing your technology, but also with other actors that that can support you either from like an investment growth opportunity or working with others again just to combine solutions. So we're thinking of these hubs as like the next place that will catch folks that may have been funded through things like the AITC or through the National Academy of Medicine challenge, longevity challenge. Folks have said to us, like, what's the next step? Some people will have a clear next step. They're already kind of engaged in conversations with the VC community. Other folks are looking for that engagement or looking for those additional settings where they can be implementing and kind of showing in operational settings how their technologies can create benefit. So that's our idea along the continuum.
Great. We have another question, whether you're working at all with area agencies on aging as you move forward, as they have the real understanding of where the challenges are for our aging demographic.
I'll start out, Meredith, again, if that's all right with you, and just say I love the question and focus on real challenges that are affecting communities. And that's sort of how we're thinking about it too. We're looking to actually engage with the regions and the individuals, organizations, et cetera, within that region that really understand what is the unique issues that are being faced in that community, and use that to guide where the hub ultimately has its focus. And so we're deploying what we call sort of a co-design, co-creation approach, really not trying to replicate organizations, efforts, knowledge that exist within the community, but leverage that and sort of fill in gaps. Meredith, anything to add sort of to that?
No, I think you spoke to that well. Just, I think I said earlier that the AAAs would be one of those key stakeholders that would be involved in the develop phase in helping to shape what the hub is doing, and define those regional challenges that should be focused on by the hub. And I just need to apologize to the audience. I actually have my own family caregiving responsibility this morning to accompany an older relative to surgery. So I need to jump off a few minutes before this cropped up well after we had planned to be on this webinar. So I apologize, but I will look forward to seeing more of the questions, and both Brendan and I are going to be available after this as well to really connect with folks that are interested in talking more about these hubs and sharing your challenges and needs. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry to leave early.
Thank you, Meredith. I really appreciate you joining us today. We have a few more questions. Maybe I can address them to Brendan. The next question has to do with a certain type of technology. In your work, interacting with different entities, doing work in aging and technology, have you identified a trend in using AI and voice to detect MCI or early dementia or Alzheimer's disease? That's something that we see as an increasing trend in our applicant pool as well.
Yes, we have observed that through a lot of the interactions we've had with different communities and leaders in the field. It's really fascinating to think about the application of these data sources or alternative data sources has ways of really understanding changes in health conditions. I think one of the similar lines of thought that I came across was somebody using the data that is attention monitoring while you're driving your car, and using some of the technology that sort of self-quote drives the car and looks at your retina. There's some very interesting technologies that are being proposed around that to actually assess sort of changes in mental health conditions. So I think for where that intersects with our idea around the hubs, it's a little bit further down the line. We first need to get in the community, have that community define sort of where they want their focus area to be, and really expand out from there. We want the focus area to serve as sort of a beacon for innovators to come in and say, yeah, I'm working in that arena, and I have the solution that is going to really solve sort of your local regional problems. And I'll add that part of what we're really trying to do with these regional hubs is build a whole of nation sort of capability areas across our nation, where there's unique hubs that are really becoming known for the type of technology that they're producing. And that region is also then getting a sort of economic growth in return from being known for that, with folks sort of coming back. So I'm very interested to see ultimately which regions sort of come forward and where they want to focus their technology area and their needs, and where something like the technology that was described might fit in.
Great, and that actually ties into the next question, which has to do with the types of technologies that are potentially worth investigating. The question is, and the answer may vary based on respective needs assessments conducted across stakeholders or sites, but when you talk about scaling technological solutions, can you provide some examples of the types of technologies that you see the Healthspan Innovation Hubs investigating?
Yeah. So I think we envision a world where really the ability to access the information that is housed in many different arenas is accessible, and technology can emerge from that allows sort of unprecedented ways of interacting and supporting people and engaging in their health. To use sort of a very crude example, in my own home, I think about, I've got my smart lights, I've got a smart fridge, maybe I've got a smart scale, I've got an application on my phone that is sharing that information. I've got my different applications that are connecting to my doctors and clinicians. I've got my applications that are consumer focused, like when I go into the supermarket. What's the way that all that data can be sort of unified together for a next generation of technology to emerge? That could be a very interesting focus area. And I think one of Meredith's points she mentioned was the right tech, right touch, right insight to the right person. There's a lot of noise out there. What is going to end up being valuable, and how do we sort of harness that noise for good? So we're really interested in sort of those technologies that haven't yet been created yet because of the barriers that they're facing.
Thank you. There's two questions that are addressing similar points, so I'll try and merge them. And those are, how do you want startups to contact you? How can one find out about the priorities of all the participating hubs? And a follow-up question to that is, do the hubs currently exist, or are they being formed? Have they already been identifying? Are you soliciting regions to work with you?
Thank you. Yeah, so the best way to contact us right now is just through these email addresses on the screen. The hubs do not yet exist. If you have sort of interest in helping us connect to a region, or you're interested in launching one, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out. And then once we do actually start getting into a region, establishing a hub, we're going to have sort of a communications approach on that, where, once we define what the areas are that we're going to focus on, we'll be sending that information out. We know we've got this great relationship right now with George, and we'll be sure to contact him and get distribution out that way. And we'll be looking for other communication methods as well to get that information out.
Can you elaborate on data capabilities, particularly in guiding IoT-based data collection and patient privacy?
Yes. Some of this might be, if there's a detailed question that this person wants to ask, please email it to me, and I'm happy to be able to get it over to some of our experts at MITRE and see if we have some folks who can have a conversation around that. As I sort of think about it, with my background, I often think about the different layers of privacy and approvals that need to be shared and agreed upon in order for that data to be available. So that's one level I'm sort of thinking about. And I'm thinking also beyond just health privacy levels, but consumer levels, and each company has their own privacy rules. So there's a lot, I think, that could be done to help streamline those type of issues, privacy issues, to make data more accessible. And then I'm also thinking about, in my head, some of the different ways data is collected and the need to sort of clean that up, make it readable and shareable. One of the data collection areas that I think of there is, I think there's something like 10 or 20 different ways to measure a temperature in a baby, and they each say something slightly different. So what does that mean ultimately for the usability of the data and comparing data across different areas? So I think there's a lot of work to be done there, but it's also that there's a lot of opportunity that now exists that did not exist in the past due to the computing power that we now have at our fingertips, and really the advances in AI and ML that could figure out ways to take care of a lot of the manual processes that we've had in the past. So I really think there's a future that is being birthed right now through the great work that the AI collaboratories are doing.
And two related questions. Are there any costs associated with working with MITRE Engenuity, direct or indirect? And then following that, if a startup works with MITRE, how is IP considered?
Thank you. Really great questions. We're happy to really have conversations with folks offline about any particular ways they want to work with us. As we sort of launch new offerings into the market, we do think about sustainability there. So each offering has its own sort of business model. There are sort of unique considerations about what that might mean from how folks engage with us. For example, with the Open Generation Consortium, there's a fee to be a member depending on the type of category you're in. And then we also think about things like IP in sort of the ways that folks join into consortiums or join on work with us together. There's different ways that we can look at that that are very unique depending on sort of the situation. I think with startups, something that I would think about is, there is unique ownership and very sort of competitive information that needs to be safeguarded by the startup. One thing that MITRE is really known for is being a trusted neutral party to safeguard that data. We operate some consortiums that are really large. An example is a consortium that brings together all of the leading airlines where they share their sensitive safety data with us, because MITRE is known to be the trusted party to house that data and make sure each entity sort of keeps control of the things that are important to them. So we're very mindful of that and very flexible in how we sort of approach different situations. And we'd love to hear from you with ideas that have come to mind from this conversation about ways that we can collaborate. We're constantly looking for new partnership opportunities.
This has been a great discussion. I want to thank you again, Brendan and Meredith, and we're hoping to have you back to tell us more about your initiatives, especially as things evolve over time, and hoping to explore further dialogue. I want to remind everybody that you can watch a recording of this webinar as well as our past webinars on our YouTube channel. Our next webinar is scheduled for October 5th. It's Dr. McCoy from the University of Pennsylvania who'll be talking about ethical responsibilities for companies that process personal data. Again, I want to thank our speakers today, and I hope to see you all in a month. Thank you.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be here and very excited to see sort of the great technology that emerges from everyone on this call. I'm constantly being inspired every day by the work that's underway. Just want to say thank you for the time and opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.